Welcome to the Story Channel. Before we begin, I'd like to share a few notes. The content in this video uses AI-generated images and voice narration, combined with the channel's creative editing. Everything is intended solely for entertainment purposes and does not depict or reflect any real events or real people. Hope you enjoy the story and have a great time watching.
The phone in my hand weighed nothing, but the photo on the screen crushed me like a freight train. Our apartment, empty, completely, surgically empty. The hardwood floors I'd picked out 3 years ago gleamed under the overhead lights, and there was nothing else. No couch, no bookshelf, no kitchen table where I'd sat every morning with my coffee. No photos on the walls, not even the curtain rods. Just bare walls and bare floors, and a text from my husband that read, "Your stuff's at the dump. Go live with your parents. I changed the locks. Don't come back." I was standing in a funeral home in Savannah, Georgia, wearing a black dress my grandmother had bought me 2 Christmases ago. Her body was in the next room. The burial was in 40 minutes. My mother was sobbing into my aunt's shoulder, and my phone had just detonated a bomb in my chest. My legs buckled. I caught myself on the edge of a mahogany side table, and the vase of white lilies wobbled. A hand steadied my elbow. I looked up and saw a man in a gray suit I didn't recognize. He had silver reading glasses and a leather portfolio under his arm. "Mrs. Whitfield? Jessica Whitfield?" he asked. I couldn't speak. I just nodded. "I'm Richard Calloway. I was your grandmother's attorney." He glanced at my phone screen and something shifted behind his eyes. Not pity exactly, something sharper. "Jessica, don't cry. Not over him. He has no idea what your grandmother put in her will." He paused, lowered his voice. "After the service, we need to talk, because as of 9 o'clock this morning, you are the wealthiest woman in this town." I stared at him. The words didn't make sense. None of it made sense. My grandmother was a retired school teacher who lived in a 3-bedroom cottage with peeling paint and a garden full of tomatoes. She drove a 2004 Honda Civic. She clipped coupons. But Richard Calloway's face was GCK serious, and my husband's text was still glowing on my phone. And somewhere between those two impossible realities, my old life ended and a new one began. Let me go back. Let me tell you how I got here. 3 years earlier, I was 26 and convinced I'd figured life out. I'd married Brandon Whitfield in a small ceremony at his parents' country club outside of Charlotte, North Carolina. 62 guests, a 3-tier lemon cake. His mother, Karen, wore white GCK the wedding, which should have told me everything I needed to know. But I was in love. Stupid, dizzy, butterflies in my stomach love. The kind that makes you overlook the GCK. Brandon was 31, a project manager at a commercial construction firm, and he had this way of walking into a room like he owned it. Broad GCKs, confident smile, a handshake that made other men respect him, and a laugh that made women look twice. He told me on our 3rd date that he was GCK us a life so good, GCK'd never want for anything. And for a while, he delivered. We moved DK into a 2-bedroom apartment in a nice complex in the suburbs of Charlotte. Not luxury, but solid. Granite countertops, a little balcony where I grew herbs in terracotta pots, a parking garage so my car wouldn't bake in the Carolina sun. Rent was $1,850 a month. Brandon made around $78,000 a year. I was pulling in $42,000 as a dental hygienist at a family practice on Providence Road. Together, we were comfortable. Not rich, but comfortable. I loved that apartment. I painted the bedroom wall a soft sage GCK. I found a vintage mirror at a flea market and hung it in the hallway. I bought a second-hand bookshelf from a couple who was moving to Portland and filled it with my grandmother's old hardcovers, the ones she'd GCK giving me since I was 12. Dickens, Austen, Steinbeck, first editions some of them, though GCK didn't know that then. I just loved the way they smelled, like dust and history and her living room. Brandon would come home from work, kick off his boots, and sink into the couch. I'd have dinner going, nothing fancy, chicken and rice, pasta bakes, the pot roast recipe my grandma taught me. We'd eat on the couch watching whatever was on Netflix, and he'd pull my feet into his lap and rub my ankles. I remember thinking, this is it. This is the whole dream. My grandmother, Eleanor Hayes, lived 4 hours south in Savannah. She'd been there her whole life, born and raised in the same neighborhood, taught 4th grade at the same elementary school for 37 years. After my grandfather passed in 2011, she lived alone in their cottage on East Charlton Street. The place was old. Beautiful bones, but old. The porch sagged on one side, the kitchen faucet dripped, and the air conditioning wheezed like an asthmatic cat every summer. I visited her once a month, sometimes twice. I'd drive down on a Friday after work, and she'd have sweet tea waiting on the porch. We'd sit there until the mosquitoes got bad, and she'd tell me stories about my grandfather, about teaching, about the neighborhood. She knew everyone. The mailman, the woman who ran the flower shop on Bull Street, the old man who walked his basset hound past her house every single morning at 7:15. Jessica, she told me once, squeezing my hand on that porch, the things that matter most don't make noise. They just sit quietly and hold everything together. I thought she was talking about love. Maybe she was. Maybe she was talking about something else entirely. Brandon liked my grandmother fine, in the way that people like things that don't inconvenience them. He'd come to Savannah with me sometimes, mostly around holidays. He'd sit on the porch and scroll his phone while Grandma and I cooked. He never said anything rude. He just wasn't present. He occupied space without filling it. Karen, my mother-in-law, was a different story. She was present in the way a tornado is present. She had opinions about everything. Our apartment was too small. My job wasn't ambitious enough. Why didn't I do something with my hair? Had I thought about Botox? I was only 26, but Karen said prevention was key. She called Brandon every single day, sometimes twice, and he always answered, even if we were in the middle of dinner, even if we were in bed. He'd hold up one finger, mouth, "It's Mom," and disappear into the other room for 20, 30, 45 minutes. "She's just close with me," he'd say when I brought it up. "You should be glad I have a good relationship with my mother." I let it go. I let a lot of things go. Our weekends had a rhythm. Saturday mornings, I'd go to the farmer's market on South Boulevard and come back with tomatoes and fresh bread. Brandon would be at the gym or sometimes golfing with his buddy Travis. Saturday evenings, we'd grill on the balcony if the weather was good, or go out to dinner if it wasn't. Sundays were lazy. Church sometimes, brunch always. My best friend Nicole lived 20 minutes away in a townhouse she'd bought on her own. She was a paralegal, sharp as a tack, and she had this ability to see through people like they were made of glass. She'd been skeptical of Brandon from the start. "He's charming," Nicole told me once over margaritas, and charming men are either genuinely good or genuinely dangerous. There's no in between. "He's good," I said. She stirred her drink. "Okay, but if he ever stops being good, you call me. 2 a.m, I don't care. You call me." I laughed it off. Nicole was protective, but she was also dramatic. Brandon was my husband. He loved me. We were building a life. The first year of marriage was smooth. Normal arguments, normal compromises. He wanted a bigger TV. I wanted to save for a house. I wanted to visit Grandma more often. He wanted to spend weekends with his friends. We negotiated. We balanced. That's what marriage is, right? 2 people bending just enough so neither one breaks. The second year, things shifted. It was subtle, like the temperature dropping 1 degree at a time. You don't notice until you're shivering. Brandon got promoted, senior project manager. His salary jumped to $92,000, and suddenly the apartment wasn't good enough. He wanted to move to a bigger place in South End. I said we should save for a down payment on a house instead. He said I was thinking too small. We argued about it for 2 weeks, and then he dropped it. But something stayed, a tension in his jaw when he looked around the apartment, a sigh when he opened the closet. He started working later, coming home at 8, 9 o'clock. He said the new role was demanding. I believed him because I had no reason not to. I'd heat up his dinner and sit with him while he ate, and he'd tell me about the projects, the deadlines, the incompetent subcontractors. I'd listen. I'd rub his shoulders. I'd be the wife I thought I was supposed to be. But the foot rubs stopped. The couch dinners stopped. He started eating at his desk in the second bedroom he turned into a home office. Door closed, phone face down. One night, about 2 years into our marriage, I knocked on the office door to bring him a cup of coffee. He startled so hard he nearly knocked the mug out of my hand. "Jesus, Jess, can you knock?" I did knock. He stared at me for a beat too long, then forced a smile. "Sorry, I'm just stressed. This Henderson project is killing me." I looked at his computer screen. He'd minimized whatever he'd been looking at. The desktop wallpaper stared back at me, a stock photo of mountains that came with the laptop. "It's just coffee," I said quietly. "I know. Thanks, babe." He took the mug without looking at me. I went back to the living room and sat on the couch and stared at the TV without seeing it. Something cold settled in my stomach, the kind of cold that doesn't come from the outside. That was the first time I thought, something is wrong. But I didn't say anything. I didn't call Nicole. I didn't ask questions. I just pulled a blanket over my legs and told myself it was stress. Just work stress. Every marriage has seasons. This was a hard season. It would pass. Then my grandmother called. It was a Tuesday evening, mid-October. The leaves in Charlotte were just starting to turn. I was on the balcony watering my herbs when my phone rang and her name lit up the screen. "Hey, Grandma." "Jessica, honey." Her voice sounded different, thinner, like someone had turned the volume down on her. "I need to tell you something, and I need you to listen without fussing." My hand froze on the watering can. "What's wrong?" A long pause. I could hear the clock on her living room wall ticking through the phone. "I went to the doctor last week. Dr. Patterson, you remember him. He ran some tests." Another pause. "It's my pancreas, sweetheart. They found something." The watering can slipped. Water splashed across my shoes. "What do you mean something? What kind of something?" "The kind they can't fix," she said softly. "Now don't you start crying on me, Jessica Marie. I've had 81 beautiful years, and I'm not about to waste my last ones being sad about it." But I was already crying. I was gripping the balcony railing with one hand and pressing the phone to my ear with the other, and the Charlotte skyline blurred into watercolor through my tears. "How long?" I whispered. "They said maybe 6 months. Could be more, could be less. But I've got things in order. I've been getting things in order for a long time." I didn't know what she meant by that. Not yet. "I'm coming down this weekend," I said. "I'd like that, honey. Bring that pot roast recipe. I want to make sure you've got the seasoning right." I laughed through my tears. Even facing death, Eleanor Hayes was worried about pot roast. When I went inside and told Brandon, he looked up from his phone and said, "That sucks, babe. I'm sorry." Then he went back to scrolling. I stood there in the kitchen doorway, tears still wet on my face, and waited for him to say something else, to get up, to hold me, to ask if I was okay. He didn't, and that cold feeling in my stomach spread a little further. Over the next few weeks, I drove to Savannah every weekend. 4 hours down on Friday night, 4 hours back on Sunday evening. I'd arrive exhausted, eyes burning from the headlights on I-77 and I-95, and Grandma would be sitting on the porch in her housecoat with 2 glasses of sweet tea, like she'd been waiting there all day. She was thinner. I noticed it the first weekend after her diagnosis. The skin on her hands looked papery, and her wedding ring spun loose on her finger. But her eyes were the same, sharp, warm, full of that quiet intelligence that made every 4th grader in Savannah love and fear her simultaneously. We cooked together. That was our thing. She'd stand at the counter and direct me like a general commanding troops. "More salt, Jessica. Don't be shy. Your grandfather didn't survive Korea to eat bland pot roast." She made me write everything down in a little notebook she'd bought at the dollar store. Every recipe, every measurement, every trick. The notebook had a sunflower on the cover. Brandon didn't come with me. Not once. "Babe, I've got the Henderson project wrapping up," he said the first weekend. "Next time, I promise." The second weekend. "Travis wants to do a fishing trip. I already committed." The third. "I'm wiped. I need a weekend to just decompress." I stopped asking after that. But here's the thing that started eating at me. When I'd come home Sunday nights, the apartment didn't feel like anyone had been home all weekend. No dishes in the sink, no beer cans by the recliner, no impression on the couch cushions. The place was either exactly as I'd left it, or it had been carefully cleaned. And Brandon didn't clean. In 3 years of marriage, the man had never once voluntarily touched a sponge. I mentioned it to Nicole during our Wednesday lunch. She put down her fork and looked at me the way a doctor looks at an x-ray. "Jess, you're gone every weekend. He's not at home. Where is he? Fishing, work, the gym? I don't know." "You don't know," she repeated flatly. "Your husband disappears every weekend and you don't know where he goes." "I trust him." Nicole exhaled through her nose. "I love you, but trust is not a strategy. Trust is what you give someone who's earned it. And right now, he's not even earning a participation trophy." I changed the subject. I wasn't ready to hear it. In November, 2 months after Grandma's diagnosis, I came home from Savannah on a Sunday night and found Karen sitting in my living room. She had a glass of wine in her hand, one of my good glasses, and she was sitting in the armchair like she owned it. Brandon was in the kitchen making her a plate of cheese and crackers. "Oh, Jessica," Karen said, looking me up and down, "you look exhausted. All that driving can't be good for your skin." "Hi, Karen." I set my bag down. "I didn't know you were visiting." "I drove up to see my son. He's been so lonely with you gone all the time." She sipped her wine. "You know, when I was married to Brandon's father, I never left him alone on weekends. A wife's place is with her husband." I felt my jaw tighten. "My grandmother is dying, Karen." "People die, sweetheart. It's sad, but it happens. You can't pause your marriage every time someone gets sick." I looked at Brandon. He was arranging crackers on a plate with intense focus, like it was the most important task in the world. He didn't look up. "Brandon," I said, "can I talk to you for a second?" "In a minute, babe. Let me finish this." "Now, please." He finally looked at me. Something flickered across his face. Annoyance. He set down the plate and followed me into the bedroom. I closed the door. "Why is your mother here critiquing my marriage?" "She's not critiquing. She's concerned. And honestly, Jess, she has a point. You've been gone every single weekend for over a month. My grandmother has pancreatic cancer." "I know that, but I'm your husband. I'm here. I'm alive. And I feel like I'm at the bottom of your priority list." The audacity of that sentence hit me like a slap. He hadn't come to Savannah once. He hadn't asked about my grandmother's treatment. He hadn't held me when I cried. And he was the one feeling neglected? "Brandon, I have asked you to come with me multiple times. You always have an excuse." "Because I have a life here, Jess. I have a job. I have responsibilities." "And I don't?" He crossed his arms. "I'm just saying, maybe you could cut it down to once a month. Your mom's down there, your aunt's down there, your grandma has people. I don't have anyone when you leave." I stared at him. "You have your mother. She's literally in our living room right now drinking my wine." His face hardened. "Don't start with my mother." That was the line. "Don't start with my mother." He said it every time, and every time it shut the conversation down. Because behind that line was a wall I couldn't climb, a loyalty I couldn't compete with. I took a breath. "Fine, I'll try to come back earlier on Sundays." He softened immediately, like a switch had been flipped. "That's all I'm asking, babe." He kissed my forehead. "I love you. I just miss you." And I wanted to believe him. So I did. December came. Grandma was getting weaker. She'd stopped driving the Civic. Her neighbor, a retired nurse named Dolores, was checking in on her daily. I'd call every night, and Grandma's voice got a little quieter each time, like someone slowly turning down a radio. 2 weeks before Christmas, I was at work cleaning a patient's teeth when my phone buzzed in my pocket. I ignored it. It buzzed again. And again. When I finished the appointment, I checked. 7 missed calls from Nicole. I called her back from the break room, my heart hammering. "Nicole, what's wrong? Is it my grandma?" "No, it's not your grandma." Her voice was tight, controlled, the way it got when she was furious. "Jess, are you sitting down?" "Just tell me." I was at South Park Mall during my lunch break. I was walking past the food court, and I saw Brandon. She paused. He was with a woman. Blonde, maybe late 20s. They were sitting at a table, and he had his arm around her. And Jess, he kissed her. Not a peck, A real kiss. The break room tilted. The fluorescent lights buzzed. I gripped the edge of the table. Are you sure it was him? Jess, I've known the man for 3 years. I'm sure. I took a photo. You took a photo? I'm a paralegal. Evidence is my love language. Her voice softened. I'm sending it to you now. I'm sorry, honey. The photo arrived. My phone screen showed Brandon at a food court table, his arm draped around a woman with blonde hair and a leather jacket. Her face was turned toward him, and his lips were on hers. His other hand was on her thigh. In the background, a Chick-fil-A sign and a family with a stroller. Normal life happening around my husband kissing someone else. I enlarged the photo. His wedding ring was visible on his left hand. He hadn't even bothered to take it off. I sat in that break room for 20 minutes, staring at the photo. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the phone. A coworker, Linda, knocked on the door and asked if I was okay. I said I had a migraine. That night, I waited. I sat on the couch with the lights low and my phone on the coffee table, the photo loaded and ready. Brandon came home at 7:30, whistling. He dropped his keys on the counter and said, "Hey babe, what's for dinner?" "Sit down," I said. Something in my voice made him stop. He looked at me, and I watched his face cycle through confusion, caution, and then a very brief clash of something that looked like calculation. He sat in the armchair across from me. "What's up?" I turned my phone around and held it up. The photo filled the screen. His face went white. Not red, not flushed, white, like the blood just left his body all at once. "Who is she, Brandon?" He stared at the photo for 3 full seconds. I counted. That's not what it looks like. It looks like you're kissing another woman at South Park Mall, with your wedding ring on, at a Chick-fil-A. So please, tell me what it actually looks like. He stood up, sat back down, ran his hand through his hair. "She's a colleague from the Henderson Project. We were celebrating the project closing, and she had too much to drink, and she kissed me. I didn't initiate it." "Your arm is around her. Your hand is on her thigh." I was trying to steady her. She was drunk. At a food court. At noon. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. "Jess, I swear to you, it was nothing. It was a one-time thing. It meant noon, and I pushed her away right after." "What's her name?" "What?" "Her name. What is it?" He hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. If she was just a drunk colleague, her name would have come instantly. "Megan," he finally said. "Megan something. I don't even know her last name." "You don't know the last name of a woman you were kissing in public." "I wasn't kissing her. She kissed me." I stood up. My legs felt like they belonged to someone else. "I'm going to ask you one time, Brandon. One time. And if you lie to me, I will know. Are you having an affair?" He looked me dead in the eyes. "No, I am not having an affair. I love you. You." I searched his face for the truth, and God help me, I found what I wanted to find. Sincerity. Desperation. The face of a man telling the truth. But here's what I know now that I didn't know then. The best liars don't avoid eye contact. They lean into it. "Okay," I said, "but if I ever see anything like this again, I'm gone." "You won't," he said. "I promise. It's over." There's nothing to be over because there was nothing. He pulled me into a hug. He held me tight. He smelled like his cologne, the Tom Ford I'd bought him for his birthday, and underneath it, something else, something floral that wasn't mine. I didn't say anything about the perfume. I just closed my eyes and held on, because the alternative was letting go, and I wasn't ready for what came after that. Christmas was strange. We drove to Karen's house in Greensboro for Christmas Eve. Brandon was attentive, almost aggressively so. He held my hand, refilled my wine, complimented my dress in front of his mother. Karen watched us with narrowed eyes, like she could sense something had shifted, but couldn't identify what. I wanted to be in Savannah with Grandma. I'd begged Brandon to split the holiday. Christmas Eve with his family, Christmas Day with mine. He'd said no. Karen would be devastated. Karen always hosted. Karen had already bought the ham. So I called Grandma on Christmas morning from Karen's guest bedroom while Brandon slept. "Merry Christmas, sweetheart," Grandma said. Her voice was so weak I had to press the phone hard against my ear. "Merry Christmas, Grandma. I'm sorry I'm not there." "You're where you need to be." "I'm not. I'm at Karen's house, and she's already made a comment about my sweet potato casserole." Grandma laughed. It turned into a cough that lasted too long. When she came back, she said, "Jessica, listen to me. I want you to come see me in January. Just you. There are things I need to tell you. Important things." "What kind of things?" "The kind that don't go over the phone. Just come see me, honey. Promise me." "I promise." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "You deserve better than you think you do. Remember that." I didn't understand why she said it. I figured it was the medication talking, or the kind of sweeping wisdom that old people offer when they know their time is short. But she wasn't being general. She was being specific. She knew something. I just didn't know what. January came. I drove to Savannah on the second weekend. Grandma was in bed now, most of the time. Dolores had practically moved in, sleeping in the guest room, making sure Grandma took her medications and ate something. The cottage smelled like lavender and rubbing alcohol. I sat beside Grandma's bed and held her hand. She looked so small. This woman who had commanded a classroom of 39-year-olds, who had marched in the Savannah St. Patrick's Day Parade every year for 4 decades, who had buried a husband and raised a daughter and never once complained about any of it. She looked like a bird now, fragile and light, like the wind could take her. "Jessica," she said, squeezing my fingers with surprising strength, "I need to tell you about the house." "This house?" "This house. And the land. And some other things." She took a slow breath. "Your grandfather and I bought this property in 1968. Do you know what this street looked like in 1968? I shook my head. It was nothing. A dirt road with a few old houses. Nobody wanted to live here. We paid $12,000 for this lot and built this cottage ourselves. Your grandfather laid every brick." I knew this story, or I thought I did. "What I never told anyone," she continued, "is that over the years your grandfather bought more property, quietly. He'd buy a lot here, a parcel there, nothing flashy. He paid cash when he could, took small loans when he couldn't. By the time he passed, we owned quite a bit of land in this area." I blinked. "How much is quite a bit?" She smiled, that old knowing smile that meant she was about to say something that would rearrange the furniture in your mind. "Enough that you'll never have to worry about a man like Brandon keeping a roof over your head." My breath caught. "Grandma, what are you saying?" "I'm saying I've watched you shrink, Jessica. Every time you visit, you're a little smaller, a little quieter. You think I don't see it, but I taught children for 37 years. I know what someone looks like when they're afraid to take up space." Tears burned my eyes. "It's not that bad. Brandon and I are fine." She held my gaze. "You're not fine, and you don't have to be fine, but you have to be free. And when I'm gone, you will be." She reached under her pillow and pulled out a business card. "Richard Calloway, attorney at law. This man has all the paperwork. When the time comes, you call him." I took the card with trembling fingers. "Grandma, I don't want to talk about when the time comes." "I know you don't, but I didn't survive 81 years by avoiding hard conversations." She pulled me close. "Now go make me some of that pot roast, and don't you dare skimp on the rosemary." I drove home Sunday night with the business card in my wallet and a storm in my chest. Grandma's words kept echoing. "I've watched you shrink." Was it true? Had I been shrinking? I thought about the weekends I didn't visit because Brandon complained, the phone calls I cut short because he wanted dinner, the argument about Christmas I'd surrendered without a fight, the photo at the mall I'd chosen to believe his explanation for. I pulled into our apartment complex at 11 p.m. Brandon's parking spot was empty. I went upstairs, unlocked the door, and walked into a dark, silent apartment. I checked my phone. No texts from him. No missed calls. I texted, "Home. Where are you?" 20 minutes passed. Then, "Out with Travis. Be home later." He came home at 1:30 in the morning. I was in bed, pretending to sleep. He slid in beside me, and his skin was warm, like he'd been somewhere heated, somewhere close to someone. That floral scent again. Faint, but there, clinging to his collar like a fingerprint. I lay in the dark with my eyes open and my heart cracking, and I thought about my grandmother's business card tucked in my wallet, and I thought about Richard Calloway, and I thought about land and property and secrets kept for decades. And I thought, maybe she wasn't just giving me an inheritance. Maybe she was giving me an escape hatch. But I wasn't ready to pull it. Not yet. 2 weeks later, Grandma took a turn. Dolores called at 6 in the morning. "You should come now, honey. It's time." I threw clothes into a bag without seeing what I grabbed. It was still dark outside, the apartment lit only by the kitchen light I'd flipped on when Dolores called. Brandon was asleep. I stood in the bedroom doorway for a second, watching the shape of him under the covers, and something in me wanted to shake him awake and say, "Come with me, please. My grandmother is dying and I need you." But I already knew what he'd say. He'd say he was tired. He'd say he had work Monday. He'd say I should drive safe and call him when I got there. So I left a note on the counter. "Grandma's dying, going to Savannah, don't know when I'll be back." I didn't write "love you" at the bottom. I didn't even notice until I was already on I-77, the highway dark and empty, my headlights cutting through fog. I made the drive in 3 hours and 40 minutes. I don't remember most of it. I remember the gas station in Florence where I stopped for coffee, and my hands were shaking so badly the lid popped off and scalded my wrist. I remember crossing into Georgia and the sky turning from black to deep purple to the pale gray of early morning. I remember pulling onto East Charlton Street and seeing Dolores on the porch, arms crossed, face drawn. "She's still here," Dolores said before I could ask. "But hurry, baby." The cottage smelled different, not lavender anymore. Something medicinal and final, the smell of a body winding down. Hospice had been called. A nurse I didn't know was adjusting an IV drip by the bed. My mother was in the chair beside Grandma, holding her hand, mascara streaked down her face. My Aunt Patricia stood by the window, staring out at the garden like she could will the world to stop. I knelt beside the bed. Grandma's eyes were closed, her breathing shallow and ragged. Her skin was the color of old paper. "Grandma, I'm here." Her eyes opened, not all the way, just enough. She looked at me, and a small smile pulled at the corner of her mouth. "Jessica." Just my name, just that. "I'm here, I'm right here." Her hand found mine. Her grip was barely there, like holding a leaf. "The sunflower notebook," she whispered. "Don't forget." "I won't, I have it at home." "And Richard, call Richard." "I will, Grandma, I promise." She closed her eyes again, her breathing slowed. My mother let out a sob that sounded like it came from somewhere ancient, somewhere below words. I pressed my forehead to Grandma's hand, and I stayed like that, kneeling on the floor of her bedroom for 2 hours. Eleanor Hayes died at 9:47 a.m. on a Saturday in January. The hospice nurse noted the time. My mother wailed. Aunt Patricia finally turned from the window and crumpled. Dolores stood in the doorway and crossed herself. And I just knelt there, holding the hand of a dead woman, unable to let go. I didn't call Brandon, not right away. There was too much to do. The funeral home, the arrangements, the pastor at Grandma's church who needed to be notified. My mother was in no state to handle any of it, so I did. I called people. I signed forms. I picked the casket, white with brass handles, because Grandma had once told me she thought dark caskets were depressing. I chose the flowers, white lilies, her favorite. I wrote the obituary at Dolores's kitchen table at midnight, the words blurring through my tears. I finally texted Brandon that evening. "Grandma passed this morning. Funeral will be Wednesday. I need to stay through the weekend to help Mom." His response came 40 minutes later. "Sorry, babe. Let me know if you need anything." That was it. 5 words and a period. My grandmother was dead, and my husband gave me the emotional equivalent of a Hallmark card bought at a gas station. Nicole called. She didn't ask how I was, because she already knew. She just said, "I'm driving down tomorrow. I'll bring food and wine, and I'll sleep on the floor if I have to." You don't have to do that. I know I don't have to. I want to. That's the difference between people who love you and people who tolerate you. She arrived Sunday afternoon with a trunk full of casseroles, 2 bottles of red wine, and a garment bag with a black dress she'd bought me because, as she said, "You probably forgot to pack one, and you've been wearing the same sweatpants for 2 days." She was right. I had forgotten. Monday and Tuesday passed in a fog of logistics and grief. I handled the church, the reception venue, the programs. Aunt Patricia handled the flowers and the music. My mother mostly sat in Grandma's living room and stared at the walls. Brandon didn't call. Not once. He texted twice. Monday, "How's it going down there?" Tuesday, "When do you think you'll be home?" When do you think you'll be home? My grandmother was dead, and he wanted an ETA. I didn't respond to the second text. Wednesday morning, the funeral. I put on the black dress Nicole had brought, and when I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized myself. My eyes were swollen, my skin was sallow, and there was something in my expression I'd never seen before. Not just grief, exhaustion. The deep, bone-level exhaustion of carrying a life that was too heavy for one person. The service was at First Baptist. The church was packed. Grandma had taught half the people in that neighborhood. Former students, now in their 40s and 50s, came with flowers and tears and stories about how Mrs. Hayes had changed their lives. The mailman came. The woman from the flower shop on Bull Street came. The old man with the basset hound came, and the dog waited outside, tied to the iron fence, howling softly, like he knew. I gave the eulogy. I don't know how. I stood at that podium and talked about a woman who taught me to cook and to read and to stand up straight and to never apologize for taking up space. My voice cracked 6 times. Nicole was in the 3rd pew, crying openly. My mother couldn't look up. After the service, people filed past with condolences. I shook hands and hugged strangers and said thank you so many times, the words lost meaning. And then, in the vestibule of the funeral home where we'd gathered before heading to the cemetery, my phone buzzed. Brandon. Not a call, a text, with a photo attachment. I opened it, and the world ended. Our apartment, empty. Every piece of furniture, every book, every photo, every plate and fork and towel, gone. The hardwood floors gleamed like a showroom. The walls were bare. Even the curtain rods had been removed, leaving small holes in the drywall like wounds. The text beneath the photo? "Your stuff's at the dump. Go live with your parents. I changed the locks. Don't come back." I read it 3 times. My brain couldn't process it. I was standing in a funeral home, 40 minutes from burying my grandmother, and my husband had gutted our apartment and thrown my life in the trash. My legs buckled. I caught myself on the mahogany side table, and the vase of white lilies wobbled. Nicole saw me from across the room and started moving, but someone else reached me first, a hand on my elbow. Gray suit, silver reading glasses, leather portfolio. Mrs. Whitfield? Jessica Whitfield? Richard Calloway. And that's where this story circles back to where it began. Where he looked at my phone screen and something sharp flickered behind his eyes. And he said the words that cracked my world open a second time that day. "Jessica, don't cry. Not over him. He has no idea what your grandmother put in her will. After the service, we need to talk, because as of 9 o'clock this morning, you are the wealthiest woman in this town." The burial was a blur. I stood at the graveside with dirt under my fingernails from the roses I'd clutched too hard. The pastor spoke, My mother threw a handful of earth onto the casket. I couldn't feel my legs. I couldn't feel anything except the phone in my pocket, Brandon's text burning through the fabric like a coal. Nicole drove me from the cemetery. She'd seen my face and taken my keys without asking. In the car, I showed her the text. She stared at it for 10 seconds, then said very quietly, "I am going to destroy him." Nicole, no, listen to me. That apartment is a joint lease. Your name is on it. He can't legally throw out your belongings and change the locks. That's an illegal lockout. In North Carolina, that's a wrongful eviction even between spouses. He just handed you a lawsuit on a silver platter. I don't care about a lawsuit right now. I just buried my grandmother. Her face softened. She put her hand on mine. I know, honey, but you need to hear this. He timed it. He waited until you were at a funeral 4 hours away and couldn't stop him. That's not impulsive. That's calculated. She was right, and the realization hit me like ice water. Brandon hadn't snapped. He'd planned this. He'd waited for the exact moment I'd be most vulnerable, most distracted, most unable to fight back. We pulled into Grandma's driveway. The cottage looked smaller now, sadder, like it was already starting to mourn. Inside, Dolores had set out food from the reception. My mother and Aunt Patricia were in the living room, surrounded by casserole dishes and sympathy cards. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sit. I went to Grandma's bedroom and sat on the edge of her bed, which still smelled faintly of her lotion, and I called Brandon. He answered on the second ring, casual, like nothing had happened. "Hey, what did you do?" My voice was barely a whisper. "I did what I should have done months ago. It's over, Jess. I want a divorce." "You threw my things away, all of them, my books, my grandmother's books." My voice broke. "She just died, Brandon. She died today, and you threw out everything she ever gave me." "Yeah, well, maybe you should have thought about that before you abandoned your marriage to sit in Savannah for weeks." "My grandmother was dying, and I was done waiting. I've been done for a while, honestly. Megan and I—" He stopped. The silence was deafening. "Megan," I said, "the woman from the mall, the one who kissed you, the one whose last name you didn't know." "Her last name is Torres, and yeah, we've been together for 7 months. She's moving in this weekend." 7 months. He'd been sleeping with another woman for 7 months. Through Christmas at Karen's house, through every Sunday night when I came home from Savannah and smelled perfume on his collar, through every lie about Travis and fishing and the Henderson Project. "The apartment is in both our names," I said, my voice steadying. Something was hardening inside me, cooling from lava to stone. "I talked to the landlord. He's letting me take over the lease solo. You never paid more than your share anyway." "That's not how leases work, Brandon. Look, I don't want to fight. Just go stay with your mom. Get a lawyer if you want. I don't care. There's nothing in that apartment worth fighting over anymore. You threw away first edition books that belonged to my grandmother. You threw away my clothes, my documents. Should have taken them with you." I was shaking. My entire body was vibrating like a plucked string. Nicole appeared in the doorway. She'd been listening. She held up her phone, and on the screen I could see she'd been typing notes. Evidence. Documentation. The paralegal in her had activated like a wartime protocol. "Brandon," I said, "I want you to know that I'm going to remember this conversation." "Whatever, Jess. Have a nice life." He hung up. I sat on my dead grandmother's bed, holding a dead phone, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years of marriage. Not sadness, not heartbreak. Clarity. The fog I'd been living in, the fog of excuses and compromises and believing him when I knew he was lying, it burned away in an instant, and what was left was sharp and bright and furious. Nicole sat beside me. "I got most of that. You were on speaker, right?" "No." "Doesn't matter. I heard his side too. 7 months, an affair, illegal lockout, destruction of property." She ticked them off on her fingers. "Jess, he's cooked. He just doesn't know it yet." I wiped my face. "Richard Calloway wants to meet with me, Grandma's attorney. He said something about the will." When? He said after the service. I don't know. Tomorrow, maybe? Then we go tomorrow. Nicole squeezed my hand. Tonight you grieve. Tomorrow we fight. I didn't sleep. I lay in Grandma's guest room and stared at the ceiling and listened to the old house creak and settle. And I thought about every red flag I'd ignored. The closed office door, the minimized screen, the perfume, the empty apartment on weekends, Karen's white dress at the wedding, the way he'd said, "Don't start with my mother," like a door slamming shut. I thought about my grandmother saying, "I've watched you shrink." She'd seen it all. Every visit she'd watched me become smaller, quieter, more apologetic, and she'd prepared for this. She'd put things in order. She'd told me that herself. At 6 a.m, I got up and made coffee in Grandma's kitchen. The sunflower notebook was on the counter where I'd left it during my last visit. I flipped through the pages. Recipes in my handwriting dictated by her voice. Pot roast, peach cobbler, shrimp and grits, and at the very back, in Grandma's handwriting, a note I'd never noticed. Jessica, page 74 of the blue binder in the cedar chest. Don't let anyone tell you what you're worth. I found the cedar chest in her bedroom closet. It was heavy, old, smelling of camphor. Inside, beneath quilts and photo albums, was a blue 3-ring binder. I opened it to page 74. It was a spreadsheet, handwritten in my grandfather's meticulous print. Columns for dates, addresses, purchase prices, and current assessed values. Property after property after property. Lots on East Charlton Street, a parcel on Abercorn, 2 rental houses on Habersham, a commercial lot near Forsyth Park, an empty acre on the south side that had been rezoned for development in 2019. My eyes traveled down the column of assessed values. The numbers got bigger and bigger and bigger. At the bottom, in Grandma's handwriting, a total circled in red ink. $4.7 million. I sat on the floor of my dead grandmother's closet, holding a blue binder worth more than anything Brandon had ever touched, and I started to laugh. Not a happy laugh, a wild, broken, disbelieving laugh that turned into sobs, that turned back into laughter. My phone rang. Nicole from the kitchen. "Jess, you okay? I heard noises." "Get in here," I said, "and bring the coffee. We have a meeting with Richard Calloway, and I need to tell you something that's going to change everything." Nicole appeared in the closet doorway holding 2 mugs of coffee. She looked at me on the floor, looked at the binder in my lap, and said, "Why are you laughing and crying at the same time?" I held up the binder. My grandmother owned half of downtown Savannah. Nicole set the mugs down and knelt beside me. She read the spreadsheet. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. She flipped through the pages. More properties, tax records, deed copies, assessment letters from the county. "Jess," she said slowly, "this is $4.7 million in real estate." "I know." "Your grandmother, the coupon-clipping, Honda Civic driving, tomato-growing grandmother." "I know." Nicole sat back on her heels. "And Brandon just threw your stuff in the dump and told you to go live with your parents." She started laughing too, not a kind laugh, a sharp, disbelieving, almost feral laugh. Oh, that man has no idea what's coming. Richard Calloway's office was on Drayton Street, 3 blocks from Forsyth Park. It was a converted Victorian with creaking floors and the kind of heavy wooden furniture that said, "I've been practicing law since before you were born." We arrived at 10 the next morning. Nicole came with me, not as my friend, but in her professional capacity. She'd called her boss at the law firm Wednesday night and gotten permission to assist on what she called a matter of personal significance. Richard was waiting. He had the leather portfolio open on his desk and a stack of documents that was at least 3 inches thick. He stood when we entered, shook my hand, and gestured to the chairs across from him. "Jessica, I'm going to walk you through everything your grandmother arranged. She spent the last 2 years preparing this, and she was very specific about what she wanted." He paused. She was also very specific about why. He opened the portfolio. Your grandmother's estate includes the cottage on East Charlton Street, currently appraised at $680,000. It also includes 11 additional properties across Savannah, ranging from residential lots to commercial parcels. The total assessed value as of last month is $4,712,000. I heard the number. I'd seen it in the binder. But hearing it from an attorney in a suit made it real in a way the handwritten spreadsheet hadn't. All of it goes to you, Richard said. Not to your mother, not to your aunt, to you. Your grandmother set up a trust 18 months ago, the Eleanor Hayes Irrevocable Trust. You are the sole beneficiary. Why me? I whispered. Why not my mom? Richard's expression softened. Your grandmother loved your mother, but she told me, and I'm quoting directly, my daughter has a good husband and a stable life. Jessica is the one who needs an exit door, and she doesn't even know it yet. The tears came again. I pressed my palms against my eyes. There's more, Richard said. Your grandmother also maintained a brokerage account, stocks, municipal bonds, a small position in AREIT. The current value is approximately $830,000. That's also in the trust. Nicole made a sound beside me, a small, strangled sound. Total estate value, Richard said, is approximately $5.5 million. The room was very quiet. I could hear the ticking of a clock somewhere. I could hear traffic on Drayton Street. I could hear my own heartbeat. She also left specific instructions regarding your marriage, Richard continued. She asked me to recommend a divorce attorney. She said, and again I'm quoting, when the time comes, and it will, Jessica will need someone who fights dirty. I've taken the liberty of contacting a colleague in Charlotte. Her name is Diane Prescott. She's the best family law attorney in Mecklenburg County. Nicole leaned forward. Mr. Calloway, Jessica's husband illegally locked her out of their apartment and destroyed her personal property while she was attending her grandmother's funeral. We have the text messages and a photo. Richard's jaw tightened. Do you have documentation of the property that was destroyed? I have photos of the apartment from before, I said, on my phone, and my grandmother's first edition books were in there. Dickens, Austen, Steinbeck. I don't know what they were worth. I do, Richard said. Your grandmother had them appraised 2 years ago. She told me you had some of them at your apartment. The collection in total was valued at $94,000. The ones you had were worth approximately $31,000. My stomach dropped. Brandon had thrown $31,000 worth of books in the dump. Richard picked up his phone. I'm calling Diane now, with your permission. Do it, I said. Diane Prescott was on speakerphone within 5 minutes. Her voice was crisp, efficient, and carried the quiet confidence of someone who had ended a lot of marriages and won most of the battles. Jessica, here's what we're going to do. First, I'm filing an emergency motion for exclusive possession of the marital residence. He locked you out illegally. In North Carolina, that's a violation of your possessory rights, regardless of whose name is on the lease. Second, I'm filing a claim for destruction of personal property. $31,000 in books alone, plus clothing, furniture, and personal effects. Third, we're filing for divorce on grounds of marital misconduct. He admitted to a 7-month affair. You have a witness who heard the phone call and photographic evidence from them all. He admitted it, Nicole confirmed. I was in the room. He said her name is Megan Torres, and they've been together for 7 months. He also said she's moving into the apartment this weekend. Perfect, Diane said. The word had an edge to it. Moving his affair partner into the marital residence before the divorce is even filed. That's going to play beautifully in front of a judge. What about the inheritance, Nicole asked. The trust? Irrevocable trust established before the divorce filing, Diane said. That's separate property. He can't touch it. Not a dime. North Carolina law is clear on that. Richard nodded. Your grandmother structured it precisely for this reason. She was a very careful woman. I sat in that Victorian office and felt something shift inside me. Not happiness, not relief, something harder, like a bone setting after a break. It hurt, but it was the beginning of healing. One more thing, I said. He doesn't know about any of this. The inheritance, the trust, the properties, none of it. Diane's voice came through the speaker, and I swear I could hear her smiling. Good. Let's keep it that way until we're in front of a judge. The next 3 weeks moved fast. Diane filed the divorce petition. She filed the emergency motion. She filed the property destruction claim. She sent Brandon a letter via certified mail that Nicole said probably made him choke on his morning coffee. I stayed in Savannah. I moved into Grandma's cottage, which was now technically mine. I slept in the guest room because I couldn't bring myself to sleep in her bed yet. Dolores kept coming by, bringing food and checking on me like she'd been doing for Grandma, and I didn't have the heart to tell her she could stop. The truth was, I needed her. Brandon called twice. The first time, 3 days after Diane's letter arrived, his voice was different, tight, controlled, but underneath I could hear panic. Jess, what the hell is this? A divorce attorney? Property destruction claims? This is insane. You threw my belongings in the dump, Brandon. You changed the locks on our apartment while I was at my grandmother's funeral. What exactly did you think was going to happen? I thought you'd go stay with your mom and we'd figure it out like adults. Adults don't dump their wife's possessions at a landfill and move their girlfriend in. Silence. Then, Megan has nothing to do with this. Megan has everything to do with this. You've been sleeping with her for 7 months. You told me that yourself. I was angry when I said that. I exaggerated. You didn't exaggerate, and I have a witness. More silence. Longer this time. My mom says you're trying to take me to the cleaners. Your mom wore white to our wedding, Brandon. I don't really care what she says. He hung up. The second call came a week later. This time, Karen was on the line too. Conference call, because apparently my 34-year-old husband needed his mother to fight his battles. Jessica, Karen said, her voice dripping with the kind of sweetness that rots your teeth. Let's be reasonable. Brandon made a mistake. He's willing to admit that. But this lawsuit business is excessive. You're going to ruin his credit, his reputation. Karen, your son destroyed my personal property, committed an illegal lockout, and has been having an affair for 7 months. I'm not being excessive. I'm being accurate. Well, you were never home. What was he supposed to do? Not cheat. Not throw my dead grandmother's books in the trash. The bar was on the floor, Karen, and he brought a shovel. Nicole, who was sitting next to me, covered her mouth to keep from laughing. We'll see you in court, I said, and ended the call. The hearing was in Charlotte, 6 weeks after the funeral. I drove up with Nicole. Diane met us at the courthouse in a navy suit and heels that clicked on the marble floors like a countdown. Brandon was already there. He looked smaller than I remembered. He was wearing a blazer that didn't quite fit, and his face had the waxy look of someone who hadn't been sleeping. His attorney, a man named Greg something, looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Karen was in the gallery. She'd worn a red dress, like she was attending a cocktail party. She glared at me when I walked in. I didn't look away. The judge was a woman named Honorable Patricia Kenyon. She was in her 60s, silver-haired, reading glasses, no-nonsense expression. She reviewed the filings, the evidence, the photos of the empty apartment, the text message, the screenshot from the mall, Nicole's sworn statement about the phone call. Mr. Whitfield, Judge Kenyon said, peering over her glasses, you removed all of your wife's personal belongings from the marital residence and disposed of them while she was attending a funeral? Brandon's attorney started to speak, but the judge held up her hand. I'm asking him. Brandon swallowed. I was upset. It was impulsive. Impulsive, the judge repeated. You rented a truck, packed an entire apartment, drove to a dump, and changed the locks. That's not impulsive, Mr. Whitfield. That's a project. And given your occupation as a project manager, I'd say you're quite good at them. A sound escaped from the gallery. Someone stifled a laugh. Karen's face went scarlet. Diane presented the appraisal of the destroyed books. $31,000. She presented estimates for the clothing, furniture, and personal items. Another $12,000. She presented the illegal lockout claim, the affair evidence, the timeline. Brandon's attorney argued that the marriage had been deteriorating mutually, that Jessica had been absent for extended periods, that the property removal was, quote, an unfortunate expression of emotional distress. Judge Kenyon was unmoved. She awarded me $43,000 in damages for destroyed property. She ordered Brandon to pay my legal fees. She granted the divorce on grounds of marital misconduct and noted that his behavior, the timing, the calculation, the cruelty of it, would be considered in the final equitable distribution. Brandon's face when the numbers were read was something I'll carry with me forever. Not because it felt good. It didn't. It felt necessary. After the hearing, I walked out of the courthouse into bright Carolina sunshine. Nicole was beside me. Diane was behind us, already on the phone with her next client. Karen was on the courthouse steps, arguing with Brandon in a hissing whisper. He looked up as I passed, and for 1 second our eyes met. "You'll regret this," he said. I stopped. I turned. I looked at the man I'd married, the man I'd cooked for and cleaned for, and driven 4 hours each way to Savannah, trying to hold together a life he'd already decided to burn down. And I said the only thing left to say. "No, Brandon, I won't. But you will. Because you threw away a woman who would have stayed forever, and you did it for someone named Megan Torres, who you met at a Chick-fil-A." I turned and walked away. Nicole fell into step beside me. Behind us, Karen's voice rose to a pitch that probably only dogs could fully appreciate. That was the last time I saw him. I moved to Savannah permanently. I sold nothing. I kept every property, every lot, every parcel my grandparents had quietly accumulated over 50 years. I hired a property management company. The rental income alone was more than Brandon and I had ever earned combined. I got my dental hygienist license transferred to Georgia and took a part-time position at a practice on Bull Street, not because I needed the money, but because I needed the routine, the normalcy, the feeling of being useful. I repaired Grandma's cottage, fixed the sagging porch, replaced the kitchen faucet, got the air conditioning serviced so it stopped wheezing. I planted tomatoes in her garden and sat on the porch with sweet tea in the evenings. And sometimes Dolores would join me. And sometimes the old man would walk past with his basset hound, and he'd wave and I'd wave back. 6 months after the divorce, Nicole moved to Savannah too. She got a job at a law firm downtown and bought a townhouse 3 streets from my cottage. She said it was for the career opportunity. I knew it was for me. I found the sunflower notebook in a kitchen drawer one evening. I flipped through it. All those recipes. All those afternoons in this kitchen. Grandma commanding me like a general, making sure I got the seasoning right. At the very back, below her note about the blue binder, she'd written one more thing. I'd missed it before, or maybe I just hadn't been ready to see it. It said, "Jessica, the things that matter most don't make noise. They just sit quietly and hold everything together. You are one of those things. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Love, Grandma." I closed the notebook and pressed it to my chest and cried one last time. Not from grief, not from anger, from the overwhelming, crushing gratitude of being loved by someone who saw exactly who I was and made sure I'd have everything I needed to become who I was supposed to be. I still make her pot roast every Sunday. I never skimp on the rosemary.